So right now I'm here at IFA. We're checking out Lenovo laptops. They announced a lot, like a lot. We have CPUs from AMD, Qualcomm, and of course Intel. I'm gonna start with the new Intel stuff. This is the Lunar Lake stuff. This is obviously using their new Intel Core Ultra 9 processors. So you have your traditional ThinkPad that we've seen before. Same sort of like matte finish on the outside. You know, it's black. Yes, it gets a little bit of fingerprints, but it feels very light. It's very, very durable. It's obviously mil STD tested, so it's meant for the field. The ThinkPad Eye still lights up. The good thing about the ThinkPad lineup has always been the fact that it just comes with a lot of ports, especially on a device that's this small. Under 2 kilograms, you have a USB-A port on the left-hand side. You have 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, and then you flip it on the other side, and then you have an HDMI 2.1 USB-A combo audio jack, and then your power button. Opening it up, it's the same ThinkPad keyboard we've seen, very clicky, smaller touchpad just to incorporate that track point. The display options are different, like it depends what you want. Like if you want an OLED display, you can totally get a 14-inch OLED display, or if you want something that's a bit more matte, you have that option too. Now, this is the interesting thing. I haven't seen this with the other partners, but Lenovo has a little thing going on with Intel called the Aura Edition, and basically it gives you a couple advantages. So one of the things that I saw was called Smart Share, and basically you can tap your phone, regardless of whether it's an iPhone or an Android device, to the side of the screen, and it will automatically transfer a picture to your computer. The other cool product they're announcing with the new Intel processors is the Yoga Slim 7i. Now, this is a 15-inch model. I don't think I've reviewed the 15-inch model on the channel. So it's a little bit bigger display, of course, because this is a yoga product. It can go 180 degrees like this. It's very thin, it's very light. You have a massive glass touchpad, no track point, but you do have a lot of function keys that you can utilize. Obviously, you have some upward facing speakers. Yogas generally have really good sound, so I'm happy to see that's incorporated here as well. Again, the display options are up to you. Like you can get this with an OLED display. And then at the end of the day, you still have lots of ports. So HDMI 2.1, Thunderbolt, you have your combo audio jack, and then on the other side, your power button, camera kill switch, another Thunderbolt 4 port, and another USB-A port. And probably the coolest announcement from Lenovo is actually a proof of concept. It's called the Lenovo Auto Twist AI PC. It can open up using voice commands and follow you around. Hi, twist, open lid. Now, once it opens up, it's gonna load up the camera. Obviously, this is a demo, and it should follow me around. Come on, that's pretty cool. Like hands-free, and then when you're done, you can say, hi, twist, close lid. Come on, that's pretty cool. Next up is AMD, and we finally have more laptops with the HX series of CPUs, or the really long name of AMD Ryzen AI 9, specifically the 365 SKU, which I haven't tested yet. I've only done the 370. But look, 2 of them on the table here today are using the 365. The first one is the ThinkBook. This is the ThinkBook 16 Gen 7 Plus, 16-inch display, obviously. ThinkBook has this 2-tone finish with a darker gray on the top, ThinkPad or ThinkBook logo directly on the other side. Port lineup is pretty good. Like you get a lot with this thing. Type-C, USB-A, or USB 4.0 rather for the Type-C, another HDMI port, another Type-C port, combo audio jack, and then on the other side you get a full-size SD card slot, you have a USB-A port, and yes, a full-size Ethernet jack. And with it, you actually get a pretty good display. It's not OLED, but it does have a high refresh rate and it's 3.2K. So really pixel dense. You get that high refresh rate, which is great if you're gonna utilize that RX 880M integrated GPU for gaming. Like if you wanna do a little gaming on the side, obviously you have to drop settings a little bit, but it will run fine. Display's matte, so it will reduce reflections. Big touchpad, obviously it's glass. It feels very good. Hold on a second. Is this haptic? Yes, this is a haptic touchpad. Okay, it's about time. Like we're seeing it on the ThinkBook now, which means we'll probably see it on more of their laptops in the future. I know I've seen it on the Z series before, but the fact that it's starting to trickle down to other Lenovo products is a big deal because I want haptic touchpads literally on everything. Okay, so that's the ThinkBook. Next up is a little bit more business focused, but it is the ThinkPad T14. So very similar design to the regular ThinkPad Carbon. It's still using a carbon chassis. Ports are pretty much identical, but the big difference is you get an AMD CPU instead of an Intel one. Super light at 2.86 pounds. If I open it up, again, looks exactly like the Carbon. You can get this with a 14-inch display. It has a 58 watt-hour battery inside of here. Display up to 400 nits of brightness. This is IPS though, it's not OLED. Same sort of ThinkPad keyboard, very comfortable to type on. Then of course you have your touchpad and a track point. Now the last laptop from AMD in combination with Lenovo is the Yoga Pro 7. So again, this is AMD's version of the Slim 7, I'd say. Goes 180 degrees, which is completely flat. You have the option to spec this all the way up to an AI9 365 processor. Big touchpad. This one is not haptic. I would love to see haptic on the Slim line. That would be so cool. Or the Pro line rather. You can get this with an OLED display. Like this one is a 2.8K 14-inch OLED display. This one has a 120 hertz display, so it does have a higher refresh rate. The ports are generally the same as the Slim model, so I'm not gonna go through all of them, but as you can see, there are a ton that you can absolutely utilize. Next up is Qualcomm, and they're introducing a few laptops with Lenovo this year, specifically 2 IdeaPads and 1 ThinkBook. Now, if you're going for the IdeaPad, you have 2 options. You can choose a more traditional standard laptop like the Slim 5X, or if you want, you can go for the IdeaPad 5X 2-in-1. Now that X obviously means Snapdragon. These are the Snapdragon X Plus processors, the 8-core processors that they just announced this week during IFA. These are obviously not as fast as the X Elite processors, but from my testing on other laptops, I did notice that you get much better battery life. Just because the processor itself is running at a lower wattage, I was able to get more battery life during the day, and you'll take a little bit of a hit on performance, but you'll get these laptops for a much better price point. So IdeaPad 5X 2-in-1, this is a 14-inch laptop. You can get it with a 1920 by 1200 OLED display, okay? You have your standard Lenovo keyboard, U-shaped keys, just like I said before. Of course, this being a 2-in-1, it flips 360 degrees. I mean, would it call it a 2-in-1 or would it be more of a convertible? I don't know, I think convertible or 2-in-1 is totally fine. Is this display touch? Absolutely, so you can get a touch display. Keyboard experience, pretty good. You have good travel distance. It's pretty light, like this is a 14-inch laptop, like it only weighs 3.3 pounds, so it's not too heavy. And then of course you get a bunch of ports on the left-hand side. You have your HDMI port, of course, and you have 2 Type-C ports. It's not Thunderbolt technically because it's a Snapdragon laptop, but one of the ports will support 40 gigabits per second. Then on the other side, you have 2 USB-A ports, a micro SD card slot, and your power button. Now, if you're not fancying a 2-in-1, they also have a regular Slim 5X. So a little bit lighter at 3.26 pounds. It does have a 14-inch display. Doesn't have the Lenovo branding directly in the middle, but it looks fairly simple, fairly clean. And of course, you have a very similar keyboard compared to the previous one. You also get an OLED display with the same sort of resolution. You can spec all these guys up with 1 terabyte of storage. This one you can do up to 32 gigabytes, whereas the other one you can only go up to 16. Now, if you want something a little bit more business or a little bit somewhere in between, they have their new ThinkBook. This is even bigger. Like this is a 16-inch laptop, the ThinkBook 16 Gen 7. Now this doesn't have an OLED display. It is using IPS. Of course, it's not touch because it is matte. The benefit of a matte display is obviously it helps reduce reflections. You have 2 speakers in it, microphones obviously, up to 32 gigabytes of RAM. So unlike the other ones, you do get a full-size SD card slot. So that's just a quick overview of what's coming up next from Lenovo. We have everything from Qualcomm, Intel, and AMD coming out onto the market soon. Obviously, I'm going to review as many of these as I can, but if there's something very specific out of the ones I talked about you do want to see, make sure to let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss those videos. And as usual, I will see everybody in the next one.